What's going on, everybody? Live here in Latrobe. Here's for Steelers Now. Nick Farabaugh here with Alan Saunders. We met with the guys today coming in to training camp. Obviously, it's a big year for this team, Alan, but we learned a lot today, both about the team, NFL things, running backs, whatever.
Yeah, I feel like we got a whole bunch of news to talk about, so let's just kind of hit the ground running, right? First of all, run test just happened right over here on the second field. Everybody's healthy, full participation. Everybody that's supposed to be here is here. Everybody that's supposed to be here is healthy. Nobody's going on the PUP list. Nobody didn't report, so all good news from a health and injury standpoint for the Steelers. Other than that, though, I think we just kind of learned. We heard from some people that we haven't heard from. You talked to Najee Harris. I think he's the big newsmaker of the day. Talked not only about the national running back situation, but also about his situation. What'd you learn from Najee?
Yeah, well, I think Najee, it kind of echoes, the same sentiments that Saquon and Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb recently talked about. They don't really have leverage. I think he admitted that outright. The Zoom meeting, as he said, was kind of a vent session for the running backs. They kind of had to take their energy out somewhere. There's not really that much they can do. They talked with the NFLPA maybe about making the franchise tag just a one kind of tag all positions. There's not specific values anymore. They think that's being abused by teams because they feel like, a guy like Saquon can be 30% of the Giants' offense and then just get tagged a second time next year instead of getting long-term security. That he said, we don't have any security multiple times, but I don't think it actually affects him with the Steelers. I think that was the big thing. He talked about this doesn't have anything for me to do with the Steelers. He thinks that he'll be taken care of when his time comes. We'll actually see if that ends up coming to fruition. Obviously, the Steelers' history with Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell has been talking to Najee a little bit, apparently. That's a little interesting takeaway. I wonder kind of where that is with the newfound perspectives we have from Le'Veon Bell, of course, this summer. I wonder if he would almost tell Najee, listen, take the deal. They offered Le'Veon Bell 5 years, $70 million.
They also offered him a franchise tag that was $14 million, which is more than the current franchise tag. The thing I'm struck by, and it's interesting you bring up Le'Veon Bell, is just the maturity of this team. It's a really young team, especially on offense, and it feels like a very hardworking, mature group. Talking about Lev Bell and just thinking back and comparing to the Bell and AB and Mike Wallace and those teams of Steelers past, nobody showed up in a fire truck today. Nobody parachuted in. There was no hot air balloon. There's Alex Highsmith signed a $70 million contract extension, showed up in a black pickup truck, stock, with his stuff in a garbage bag.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett went on got married, was on honeymoon for 5 days, and then was like, nope, got to come back, got to go to work. It feels like a very good combination of youth and a high level of maturity that I think is really going to serve this team well going forward. Obviously, it's day zero of training camp, and it's hard to draw conclusions from guys walking into a dorm, but that really did strike me today.
Yeah, Broderick Jones came in an Uber.
There you go.
Guys just find whatever ways, right? I think they're about business. Speaking of the young offense, though, I think one of the big takeaways we just learned a little bit ago was from Mike Tomlin and talking about the explosiveness he wants to see out of this offense. I think that's something that we actually haven't heard at all this spring, right? We haven't
heard from an authority figure.
Yeah, we hadn't heard. We had heard from Kenny Pickett. Maybe we take more.
Of course, Kenny wants to throw the ball more. What quarterback doesn't? Right. I think it's a little bit different when you hear the head coach say it.
Yeah, George Pickens has said that before, but when you hear Mike Tomlin say we weren't as explosive as we wanted, we need to get plays in chunks. Listen, this is the missing element of the offense, right? That when you talked about last year, when say they ranked top 10 in EPA and points per drive, they ranked 10th basically after the bye week. They ranked top 10 in basically every usable metric you could think of. But the point totals did not match up. 16 points, 13 points. Remember, they just didn't score a lot of points in that second half of the year, and the reason why is they weren't explosive enough. I think that's the natural next step in this offense. I think that's an important thing to take from this when you reinforce an offensive line. You reinforce your identity, but you also try and add another element.
Well, and I think that's a lot. I think a lot of people have the concept of the Steelers offense a little bit wrong this year because they're thinking, okay, what did they do this offseason? Well, they went out and got a starting left guard. They drafted a first-round left tackle. They got a wide receiver in Allen Robinson who's kind of like a slot guy, mostly a blocker. They draft Darnell Washington, this giant freak blocker. All those moves say running game, and I do think they want to run the ball more effectively, but this is not a team that I think is planning on coming and taking the air out of the ball. They want to be more explosive. They want to win on first down. with that running game so that they can set Kenny Pickett up into good situations to take risks and move the ball down the field. And I think it was good to hear Mike Tomlin say that. The other part of that, though, I mean, talking about Broderick Jones now twice, I think we have to mention Mike Tomlin said Dan Moore is going to take the first reps with the first team. That really doesn't surprise me, but that is something that we're probably going to be watching and talking about here on this fields and here on this channel every day until the start of the regular season, basically. I mean, it's going to be a daily thing, I think.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think it's a big concern. I think, rookie linemen struggle all the time. Andrew Thomas, who just got a massive contract today, we're talking $25 million per year from the Giants. He struggled his first year. Evan Neal for the Giants struggled his first year. It takes a rare lineman.
I mean, if you look at, there was a really good top of the class last year of offensive tackles, and not all those guys had great rookie seasons.
Exactly. And listen, some people point out Rashawn Slater and Tristan Wirfs as the antithesis to that, but it's like Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes coming in, right, and just dominating it. Like, these guys are outliers in terms of that. Broderick Jones, I think, is going to have a learning curve. He's probably out of the top guys that we talked about this year, Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski, and Broderick Jones. He's probably the rawest out of them, but he perhaps has the highest ceiling out of all of them. He's got a great athletic build. I think, Pat Meyer's been working with him to kind of redo his hands, footwork, just kind of get it right. I talked about this on Steelers Now too in an article. I expect him to struggle a little bit early. I think we could see a Kenny Pickett-like camp for him, where he struggles early and just kind of goes up, and I think he could win the starting job. I'm not sure if he will. I think it could also be a Kenny-like situation where maybe he comes in, sometime.
They get that early bye. Like, it could happen again. But I also agree. I think we're going to see some learning opportunities here for Broderick Jones. Like, when we get out here and see some one-on-ones early next week and even tomorrow, we'll have pads on, so it won't be the full deal tomorrow. But I think we're going to see T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith make him look a little bit silly from time to time, and I think that'll be a good thing for him.
Yeah, and listen, whenever he is on second team, if I were Mike Tomlin in that defense, I would put him up against Marcus Golden every single time. Let him face a veteran that is known for being a crafty pass rusher. That's the concern with Broderick Jones. He's never going to be a concern as a run blocker. He's a plus run blocker. He's probably a better run blocker than Dan Moore is right now.
Yeah, I'd agree.
He's just really there as a run blocker, and I think that's potentially why he can earn that first week start, kind of. He's just really good in the run game. But it's the pass pro where you can't get Kenny Pickett killed because, remember, 2 concussions last year for Kenny Pickett. Can't allow that to happen. Can't allow your quarterback to get crushed. So it's going to be about him kind of coming along. But I think Broderick Jones, he might even struggle his whole rookie year, but he is a guy that has that natural makeup, the natural work ethic, and you look at what he did at Georgia. Same thing at Georgia. He struggled his first few games.
They didn't draft him for 2023.
No,
he's a 10-year guy, and I think that's clear. So I'm not so super worried. And look, I think Dan Moore has the ability to set that bar really high. I think he can be better than he's been. He's done well against some premier pass rushers. It's mostly just been consistency for him. I think in year 3, it's reasonable to expect him to be a little bit better. And I think that it could end up being a good problem to have for the Steelers, where they may end up with 2 options they feel okay about.
And listen, Dan Moore's done everything right. Broderick Jones also said Dan Moore's been a mentor to him. He looks great, Dan Moore. He looks bulkier. He's bigger. He learned right tackle on his own. I just think he's done everything right. And that's not necessarily saying that Dan Moore's the future at left tackle. He's not. Obviously, that's Broderick Jones. But what I was saying about Georgia is Broderick Jones struggled his first few games at Georgia, and he just got better over time. This is a guy that just corrects his mistakes once he learns them, but he does make those mistakes early. But once he corrects them, you got them. He's got that mentality where if you teach him something and he messes it up once, it's not going to be messed up again. And I think that's called being coachable. And I think that's what you really look for. When you get a tackle at 14 overall and you trade up for him and he's a little raw, he better have that makeup. And I think you can see that makeup both on tape and in his mentality for when he approaches the game. So I expect Broderick Jones, maybe he doesn't start week 1. Wouldn't surprise me if he catches on quickly. But I think by the end of the year, we're going to be talking about a guy with a few starts under his belt. I think even though he's raw, he can develop a little quicker than most would kind of in his position.
Yep, I agree. Put you on the spot here. Who's the guy you're most looking forward to see tomorrow?
Yeah, the guy I'm looking forward to most seeing tomorrow is probably Kenny Pickett. And I know that's an easy answer, but he's the quarterback, right? But this is a guy that is literally the future of the franchise. He's going to make or break it, right? They look like they're coming in to a nice nucleus here, where they're going to be a playoff team for the future years. Maybe they can contend with the AFC, but you can't do that without the quarterback. And so Kenny Pickett, There's been reports, I think this week, Adam Kaplan said his arm is noticeably stronger. I know we saw him in the spring, but that's something to look at. I just think when you get in the live environments like you'll see tomorrow, we're going to finally see him working against different coverages, disguises. We didn't see that in the spring, and we're going to see him try and get going here. I want to see him work in the pocket. I want to see him process. I want to see him take the leap from things that he was messing up in year one. I want to see that in year two. So he's probably the guy on the defensive side of the football. If we're talking about a guy I really want to see, I think that has to be Patrick Peterson. And the reason is...
That was going to be my answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited to see what he can do in this defense and the ways that they're going to use him. I think that's the one thing maybe about this team that we know the least about is, like, we know they have a bunch of good pieces in the secondary, but like you're saying, like in the spring, we don't really get to see the full package put together. Like, what does this defense look like? What's a base? What's a nickel? What's a dime? What's a heavy nickel? How much is he move into the slot? Where does Joey Porter Jr. and Keanu Neal and some of these other guys who maybe aren't like 3-4 base starters, but Shannon Sullivan, but guys are going to play a lot. Where do they all fit in? And I think Patrick Peterson is the key to all of that. Is where he goes first. Then you can kind of fill in the rest of those packages and see how it all plays out. So that's the thing I'm looking forward to. Also, I got to talk to him today, and man, that's just a guy that loves football. He's excited. He said he hasn't been in a college dorm room in 10 years, but he's like, man, you got to be where your feet is at. Just embracing it, dive in. He did say that he doesn't have to have a roommate. I guess that's a vet privilege that he gets. So he was very okay with that. But I love his attitude, his mindset to teaching and bringing along these young guys like Porter and Trice. When he talked, he probably talked more about those guys than he did anything about his own game. Just an awesome guy. So I'm really excited to see him out here in black and gold for the first time.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable expectation. Folks, make sure to check out more at SteelersNow.com. This was the Steelers Camp Report. Thanks for listening.